Hello everybody! If you want all the story's content in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 846, A Long Drive to the Park. Upper Intermediate. Arthur checked the boot of his old blue hatchback one last time, making sure the lead, the water bowl and the bright yellow tennis ball were safely packed. Beside him, Buster sat patiently on the pavement, his tail thumping a steady rhythm against the damp concrete. The morning was crisp and cool, with the pale sun struggling through a thin layer of clouds. It was exactly the kind of weather that called for a proper outing. "Right then, lad," Arthur said, opening the passenger door. Buster leapt inside without hesitation and settled onto the folded blanket that always lived on the front seat. The engine turned over with a familiar cough, and Arthur guided the car away from his narrow street. He took the long route deliberately, preferring the quiet residential roads to the busy dual carriageway. As they drove, the familiar landmarks of the neighbourhood slowly gave way to larger shops, then to the glass-fronted office blocks of the business district. Finally, they reached the outer suburbs, where the houses grew smaller and the trees began to thicken. Willow-filled Park lay on the far side of the city, a sprawling green space that most locals rarely visited because of the journey. Arthur had not been there for nearly 2 years, but he remembered the wide lawns, the ancient oak trees, and the quiet paths that wound alongside a narrow stream. He pulled into the small car park near the main entrance, switched off the engine, and took a deep breath. The air here smelled entirely different, clean and earthy with a faint hint of pine. As soon as the door opened, Buster was out like a shot, his claws clicking sharply against the tarmac. He stretched his legs, gave a quick shake, and turned to look back at Arthur, clearly waiting for the next signal. Arthur attached the lead loosely, knowing that park rules required dogs to be kept under control near the entrance, and they set off along the gravel path. It was not long before they heard the familiar sound of another dog barking in greeting. A black and white collie came trotting around the bend, followed closely by a woman in a wet, waterproof jacket. "Morning," she called out cheerfully. "Do they get along?" Arthur smiled and nodded. Buster has never met a stranger. "Go on then." She unclipped the lead and the two dogs sniffed cautiously before instantly falling into a playful bow. Arthur and the woman exchanged the usual brief conversation that dog owners share, discussing breeds, ages, and the best places for walks. Her name was Eleanor, and she told him that she drove from the opposite end of the town every weekend, simply because Buster loved the wide-open spaces. They continued walking together for a while, passing groups of people with prams, joggers with earphones, and elderly couples carrying walking sticks. The park was quietly alive with movement. Eventually, they reached the large grassy area near the duck pond. Eleanor headed towards the benches, but Arthur knew this was the moment Buster had been waiting for. He unclipped the lead, pulled the bright yellow tennis ball from his coat pocket, and held it up. Buster froze, his entire body rigid with anticipation. Arthur threw the ball across the damp grass. The dog chased after it with astonishing speed, his ears flapping wildly in the wind. When he finally reached it, he picked it up gently, turned, and bounded back towards Arthur, dropping it proudly at his feet. They repeated this routine again and again, the ball flying through the cool air, the thud of paws echoing softly across the field. Occasionally, another dog would join in, turning the game into a joyful, chaotic chase. After an hour of relentless running, Buster finally slowed down. He lay sprawled on the grass, his sides heaving, a thick line of drool hanging from his jaw. Arthur sat beside him on a wooden bench and unscrewed his thermos. The steam rose in thin white curls as he poured a cup of strong tea. He offered a digestive biscuit to Eleanor, who was sitting nearby with her own dog, and they watched the afternoon light begin to turn golden. People passed by, waving or nodding in that easy, unspoken way that regular park visitors share. A young man was teaching his border collie to jump over a low hurdle. 2 teenagers were tossing a frisbee near the trees. Children were feeding crusts of bread to a group of impatient mallards. "He looks absolutely worn out," Eleanor remarked, smiling as Buster let out a long, contented sigh. "He is," Arthur replied, scratching the dog behind the ears. "But it is the best kind of tired, I think." He checked his watch and realised they had been there for nearly 4 hours. The sky was beginning to soften at the edges, and a light breeze carried the distant sound of church bells from the town centre. It was time to head home. Arthur whistled softly, and Buster lifted his head, stretched once more, and trotted over without complaint. They clipped the lead back on, walked slowly towards the car park, and left the park with the same quiet peace they had arrived with. The drive back was slower than the journey out. Traffic had thickened, and the car moved through a steady stream of red brake lights. Buster lay with his head resting on the blanket, eyes half closed, listening to the hum of the tyres on the road. Arthur kept the radio low, letting the gentle chatter of a local news programme fill the space between them. When they finally pulled into the quiet street where his house stood, the sky had turned a deep shade of purple. Arthur opened the door and Buster stepped down carefully, his movements stiff but satisfied. They walked through the front gate, climbed the 3 stone steps and went inside together. Arthur hung up his coat, filled Buster's bowl with fresh water, and placed a soft cushion near the radiator. The dog circled twice, lay down and closed his eyes immediately. Arthur stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. He knew that tomorrow would bring rain, or work, or both, but today had been exactly what they needed. The park would still be there next weekend, and so would the car, and the ball, and the quiet understanding between a man and his dog. If you learned a new word today, please make sure to subscribe so you can practice again next time. Vocabulary notes. Landmarks. Context. As they drove, the familiar landmarks of the neighbourhood slowly gave way to larger shops. Explanation. A landmark is a recognisable object or feature in a landscape that helps you know where you are. In cities, these might be famous buildings, statues, or bridges. In the story, Arthur uses these visual cues to understand his progress across town. Similar words: monuments, sites, reference points, features. Sprawl, sprawling. Context. Willowfield Park lay on the far side of the city, a sprawling green space. Explanation. To sprawl means to spread out over a large area in an irregular or untidy way. When used as an adjective, sprawling, it describes something that covers a wide area. It often suggests that the space is extensive and perhaps not perfectly organised, but in the case of the park, it implies plenty of room to explore. Similar words: expansive, widespread, extensive, scattered. Anticipation. Context. Buster froze, his entire body rigid with anticipation. Explanation. Anticipation is the feeling of excitement or anxiety about something that is going to happen in the future. In this scene, Buster knows the ball is about to be thrown, so he is waiting eagerly for the action to start. It is a strong feeling of expecting something pleasant. Similar words: expectation, eagerness, suspense, foretaste. Relentless. Context. After an hour of relentless running, Buster finally slowed down. Explanation. If something is relentless, it continues in a severe or extreme way without stopping or becoming weaker. Here, it describes the continuous, high-energy play between Arthur and Buster. It suggests that the dog did not take any break and kept going with full energy for a long time. Similar words: continuous, non-stop, unceasing, persistent. Unspoken. Context: nodding in that easy, unspoken way that regular park visitors share. Explanation: unspoken refers to something that is understood or felt but not said aloud. In the story, the people in the park do not need to talk to each other to show friendliness. A simple nod is enough because they share a common understanding of the environment. It implies a silent agreement or connection. Similar words: implicit, tacit, silent, understood. Story written by Steve UK and Quen 3.6+. Image created by Quen 3.6+. To read, see all the story's content in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. CC Music, drifting at 432 Hz, Unicorn Heads.